In the middle of a marathon, a poor black boy was giving it everything he had, running for a better future. Victory was within reach, but just as he closed in, the only runner ahead of him collapsed. Without hesitation, he stopped. He lifted her into his arms and helped a lone medic save her life. He gave up the race. There was no applause, no spotlight, just silence. But 2 days later, when he least expected it, her father showed up at his door, and what happens next will change his Elsife forever. Before we dive into this story, what's your favorite sport? Comment below and let us know. Marcus didn't look like a runner. Not the kind who trained in shiny tracksuits or carried electrolyte packs strapped to their waists. He was 14, thin as a rail, dark-skinned with sharp cheekbones and a quiet presence. Every morning before the sun climbed over the rooftops of the mobile home park where he lived, Marcus was already up and out, his breath visible in the air, as he delivered newspapers on his rusty old bike, then ran part of the way to school to save time. His shoes, if they could still be called that, were falling apart. The soles were thin as cardboard, one lace had been replaced by a piece of frayed speaker wire, and the fabric was so torn that his socks, also full of holes, peeked out with every step. But somehow, when he ran, he moved with a grace and power that made people stop and watch, even if they didn't quite understand why. Marcus lived with his mom, his dad, and 2 younger siblings in a tiny 2-bedroom trailer. His dad worked the overnight shift at a gas station on the highway, and his mom cleaned houses when she could get the hours. Marcus knew how tight things were. He knew which bills were overdue, which light switches didn't work, and when there wasn't enough food, he said he wasn't hungry so his little brother could eat more. That was just life, hard, quiet, and without many choices. But Marcus had one thing: he could run. He didn't know why he was fast, he just was, and even though nobody had ever really paid attention, it made him feel strong in a way nothing else did. That changed the day Mr. Brooks saw him run. It was during gym class. The school couldn't afford real equipment, so most kids walked the track. Marcus didn't. He took off when the coach said go and left the whole class in the dust, his ragged shoes flapping with every stride. Mr. Brooks, gray-haired, lean and sharp-eyed, had seen a lot of kids over the years, but something about Marcus made him take notice. A former competitive runner himself, Mr. Brooks had an eye for technique, and Marcus's form, his timing, his sheer natural rhythm, it was unmistakable. After class, Mr. Brooks approached him, clipboard under one arm. "You ever think about training seriously?" he asked. Marcus shrugged. "Don't got time, I got work after school." Mr. Brooks didn't press, but he watched. And the next week, and the week after that, he waited outside the school when Marcus finished his shift at the grocery store. He brought water, a stopwatch, and eventually a pair of old but sturdy running shoes from his own closet. "They're nothing fancy," he said, handing them over, "but they'll last you longer than what you've got." Marcus hesitated. "My parents won't like it," he said. "They think running's just wasting time." And they did. His mom was blunt. "Marcus, running won't pay the bills. It won't buy your sister's asthma meds. You work, you study, and maybe one day you'll get a real job. That's how we survive." His dad said little, but the look in his eyes, tired and worn, said the same. They weren't mean. They were scared. They'd seen too many dreams lead nowhere. But Marcus made a decision. He didn't argue. He didn't beg. He just kept waking up earlier. He kept running after work, after dinner, late at night. He ran under streetlights, through alleyways, and across empty schoolyards, his breath sharp in the cold air. He kept his grades up, did his chores, and somehow fit the training in between everything else, because deep down, he wanted something more, not just for himself, but for his family. Mr. Brooks watched it all. He never pushed Marcus. He just stood there at the edge of the track with his stopwatch and a look of quiet belief on his face. And when the registration opened for the biggest marathon in the state, Mr. Brooks paid the fee out of his own pocket and filled in Marcus's name. "You don't have to win," he said. "But I think you should run with people who believe they can." Marcus looked at the entry form, his name typed below rows of kids from elite schools and private training camps, and nodded. "I will." He didn't know what would come next. He just knew that whatever happened, he wasn't going to stop running. In the weeks that followed, Marcus ran like the world was watching, even though at first no one was. Every night, after he finished stacking boxes at the corner grocery store, he met Mr. Brooks at the cracked old track behind the school. There were no stadium lights, no cheering crowds, just the sound of sneakers on gravel, Marcus's steady breathing, and Mr. Brooks counting off lap times with that same worn-out stopwatch. "You're getting faster," the old man would say. "But it's not just speed, it's heart. That's what makes runners great." At school, not everyone saw it that way. Some classmates started to notice Marcus's training and had plenty to say about it. "Look who's trying to be a hero," one kid sneered, eyeing Marcus's patched-up shoes. "What's next, the Olympics?" another laughed. "Hope the prize is enough to buy new laces." The worst came from Bryce Chandler, a junior from the wealthy side of town, tall, smug, and full of sharp smiles. His dad was the mayor, and Bryce never let anyone forget it. He'd already been featured in the local paper as the future of high school athletics. When he heard Marcus was entering the marathon, he laughed loud enough for half the hallway to hear. "Hope you don't trip over those garbage shoes, man," he said. "This ain't a charity race." Marcus didn't respond. He didn't have time to waste on noise, but it still stung. Even Mr. Brooks faced whispers in the teacher's lounge. "You're giving this kid false hope," one coach said. "Letting him think he can hang with those academy-trained runners, that's not encouragement, it's cruelty." But Mr. Brooks didn't budge. "The difference between hope and cruelty," he replied, "is whether someone's willing to work for it." Still, things weren't easy at home. The marathon was coming closer, and Marcus's shifts were getting longer. His mom took on a second job, cleaning a motel off the highway, and his dad was falling asleep standing up. One night, when Marcus came home late from training, he found his little sister wheezing. Her asthma had flared, and the last of her medication had run out that morning. His mother was holding back tears, cradling the girl on the couch. "I should have picked up another shift," Marcus said, standing there, feeling the weight in his chest. "No," his mom replied, her voice hoarse. "You're doing everything you can, it's just, we're tired, baby. We're all tired." The next day, Marcus showed up to train, quieter than usual. Mr. Brooks handed him a water bottle, but didn't speak at first. After a while, he said, "Sometimes the hardest thing ain't running. It's choosing to keep running when you've got every reason to stop." Marcus nodded, jaw tight. "I'm still in it." A week before the race, a small miracle happened. A local diner owner who had heard about Marcus's story slipped an envelope into his hand after work. Inside was $50 and a note, "For the boy who runs with more heart than any of us can handle." Others followed, modest donations left in tip jars, an anonymous pair of high-performance socks in his locker, and a second-hand watch donated by a retired mailman. The town, once skeptical, was beginning to watch. Still, nothing could fully prepare Marcus for what was coming. The final training session ended with Mr. Brooks sitting him down on the bench by the track. He looked serious, more than usual. "You're not just running against them, Marcus. You're running against everything that ever told you you can't. That voice in your head, the weight on your back, the bills on your kitchen table. You don't need to beat Madison Carlisle or Bryce Chandler. You just need to finish knowing you gave every ounce of yourself." Marcus looked out over the empty field, where the wind bent the tall grass just slightly. He nodded. "I'm ready." The date was set. His name was printed on the roster. He was no longer just the boy in old shoes. He was runner 212 in the biggest marathon in the state. And no matter who lined up beside him, he wasn't planning to stop. The day of the marathon dawned cold and gray, with a sharp wind sweeping through the Birmingham streets like a quiet dare. Marcus stood among a sea of athletes in bright running gear, each stretching, bouncing, checking devices. He didn't have any of that. His hoodie was thrifted, his running bib number 212 hung slightly crooked on his shirt, and his shoes, though worn, had been cleaned the night before with a toothbrush and care. They weren't flashy. They were Mr. Brooks' old pair from a lifetime ago, and to Marcus they were sacred. Mr. Brooks leaned in before the start. "Remember what we said. You don't need the world to notice. You just need to know you gave it everything." Marcus nodded once, heart steady. In the distance he spotted Madison Carlyle's sleek ponytail branded jacket flanked by a small crew. Near her, Bryce Chandler, always smirking, snapped a selfie with his bib held up like a trophy before the race even started. Marcus didn't look at them again. He knew what he came here for. When the starting horn blew, the runners surged forward like a tide. Marcus kept his pace controlled, just like he'd practiced. For miles, he let others rush ahead, burning their fuel too early. He watched, listened to his breath, monitored the feel of his legs. At mile 10, he began to pick off runners one by one. By mile 16, he passed Bryce, who was already red-faced and clearly overexerted. By mile 22, Marcus was in second place. Only one person stood between him and an impossible dream. Madison. She ran like a metronome, her cadence perfect, but Marcus noticed something shifting. Her shoulders were tighter, her stride shortened. By mile 23, her left arm was dangling awkwardly. By 24, just as the course turned into a winding parkway lined with tall trees, she staggered sideways and reached out for the wooden railing lining the trail. And then she collapsed. Marcus's breath caught. He slowed instinctively. His eyes darted to the nearby medical station just ahead at the bend of the park trail. A single EMT stood beside a bench with a med bag and a radio, looking panicked. "We've got a runner down," the medic shouted into the radio. "I need backup at checkpoint Delta. Possible heat stroke. Central unit stuck handling the crash on the west curve. We're alone out here." Marcus could have run on. The finish line was less than 2 miles away. He was seconds from overtaking Madison. Victory, something his family had never known, was within reach. But he didn't move forward. He turned back. Madison was sprawled on her side, unmoving, shallow breaths escaping from pale lips. Her skin looked dry, hot. She was disoriented, eyes glassy as she mumbled incoherently. "She's severely dehydrated," the medic muttered, kneeling, voice shaking. "Maybe heat stroke, maybe worse. We're alone right now. Rest of my team's responding to a pileup. I can't lift her on my own." "I've got her," Marcus said, already kneeling beside the girl. He gently turned Madison onto her back, tilting her chin up to open her airway. He remembered from school. Check breathing, check pulse. Her pulse was fast. Too fast. He took her wrist, counted. "She needs fluids, fast." "I can't leave this station to go to the ambulance post," the medic said. "It's half a mile back that way. Can you carry her?" Marcus didn't answer. He slid his arms under Madison's shoulders and knees, lifted her in one motion, and stood. His legs screamed in protest, already burning from the 24-mile run behind him. Madison wasn't heavy, but she was taller than him and completely limp. Every step back to the bench was a battle of will. His knees buckled twice. Sweat streamed down his neck, his back soaked through. The old shoes gripped mud and nearly slipped more than once on the leaf-strewn path. A sharp cramp struck his side, but he held on. At one point, Madison stirred faintly. Where? "You're okay," Marcus said between breaths. "Almost there." He reached the bench and gently lowered her down. The medic rushed in, helping guide her head, opening a gel pack to press against her neck and ripping open a sealed electrolyte drink. "She needs her legs elevated. Help me." Marcus dropped to his knees, grabbed her calves and lifted. The medic took vitals, adjusted her posture, and applied a cold compress to her forehead. "You bought us enough time," the medic said. "She's stable. She's going to be okay." Marcus wiped the sweat from his brow with the sleeve of his shirt. His chest heaved, every breath labored. He sat on the edge of the bench for a moment, just long enough to see Madison's eyes flicker open. Then he stood. No words, no attention, no fanfare. He turned and started jogging back toward the trail. His legs were heavier now, his breath harder to regulate. One by one runners passed him, some barely sparing a glance, others puzzled at where he had gone. He ignored them. He didn't count how many passed. He didn't care. He crossed the finish line at 5th place. No cameras zoomed in, no trophies were handed to him, no headline shouted his name. But standing by the edge of the finish line, Mr. Brooks waited. His eyes locked on Marcus the moment he came through. There was pride in them, not the kind you find in medals or records, but in something deeper. Marcus stumbled into his arms and exhaled. You didn't have to stop, Mr. Brooks said, voice low. I couldn't just leave her, Marcus replied. No, the old man said, smiling faintly. You couldn't. They didn't say anything else. They just stood there as the crowd clapped for someone else, someone who hadn't stopped running. But Marcus knew. He had finished exactly the way he was meant to. Marcus didn't expect applause when he crossed the finish line, and he didn't get any. The announcers were too busy calling out the names of the top three. Photographers swarmed around the medalists, and the crowd cheered for someone else entirely. He didn't mind. That wasn't why he came. Still, fifth place stung. Not because he lost, but because people wouldn't understand why. He could already feel it in the way the volunteers handed him a cup of water and moved on, in the way one boy from his school looked at him and said under his breath, "Thought you were going to win." Mr. Brooks never said the word proud, but it was in his face. The old coach clapped his hand on Marcus's shoulder, held it there for a long second and said, "Let 'em think what they want. You and me, we know what happened out there." Marcus nodded, but it was hard. The finish line had never seemed so quiet. He'd trained for months, sacrificed sleep, meals, time with his family, and now he stood in the middle of a crowd that didn't know his name, didn't care that his legs still trembled from carrying a girl who could have died. They saw a fifth-place runner. Not a decision, not a story. Later that evening, back home in the trailer, Marcus sat on the edge of his bunk bed, still in his hoodie, race bib 212 crumpled in his hand, streaked with dirt and sweat. He looked across the room at the photo of his little sister smiling, with two missing front teeth. He placed the bib beside it like an offering and just stared at it. He didn't say anything. He didn't need to. The next morning at school, things felt off. Not in a cruel way, just distant. Some people gave him half-hearted nods. A few classmates who'd followed the marathon said things like, "You almost had it," or "Better luck next time." Bryce didn't say anything at all, just passed by him in the hallway with a smirk. The hardest part came in the lunchroom. He overheard someone say, "I thought he was the big hope. Guess not." Another chimed in, "All that work for fifth place? He should have just finished strong." Marcus stayed quiet. He didn't explain. He thought about telling them, about Madison, the collapse, the heat stroke, the medic all alone, but the moment never came. He figured if they needed a trophy to understand why he stopped, then maybe they weren't ready to know. Even Mr. Brooks, after hearing some of the whispers, had asked gently, "You want me to talk to the principal? Maybe get a statement out?" Marcus had shaken his head. No, let it sit. Truth still true, even if nobody claps for it. It felt like the moment might just pass, like everything he gave would be swallowed by silence. Until 2 days later. A sleek black Cadillac pulled up to the front of Marcus's trailer park, a sight no one in the neighborhood had seen before. It parked slow, deliberate, like it didn't belong and knew it. Doors opened. Madison Carlyle stepped out first, still a little pale, her arm in a light sling. Her father followed. Tall, serious, dressed in a charcoal gray suit, the kind that looked expensive even from 50 feet away. Marcus's mother opened the door in her apron. His father came out from the side, wiping grease from his hands. Marcus stepped out behind them, unsure, blinking in the afternoon sun. "Are you Marcus?" Mr. Carlyle asked, stepping forward. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried weight. "Yes, sir," Marcus answered. "I'm Madison's father. She told me everything. About what you did. About what you gave up." Marcus looked at Madison, who gave a faint smile. "You saved my life," she said quietly. "I don't think I would have made it if you hadn't stopped." Mr. Carlyle nodded. "I don't give out handouts, Marcus. I don't believe in pity, but I do believe in recognizing integrity. And you, what you did out there, that was the definition of sportsmanship, of character. That's what I want associated with the programs I support." He extended a hand. "I'm offering you a full athletic scholarship, training at a private facility I sponsor, and, if you're willing, I'd like you to join the elite youth track club I help fund. It's not just for winning races. It's about building leaders." Marcus's mouth opened slightly, but no words came. Mr. Carlyle turned toward his parents. "And for the two of you, If you're interested, I have job openings at 2 of my regional businesses, management positions. You've done enough surviving, let's give you space to live." Nobody spoke for a moment. The silence was thick, not awkward, but heavy with relief, with disbelief, with the sense that something rare had just happened. Marcus's father cleared his throat, nodded once. His mother put a hand over her mouth, eyes glassy. Mr. Brooks, standing at a distance near the curb, watched it all unfold. He didn't step in, but Marcus turned toward him and said, loud enough to carry, "If I go, he goes too. He's the reason I got this far." Mr. Carlyle looked over, then nodded. "We could always use a man with an eye for heart. Consider him invited, as a senior advisor." And just like that, everything changed. Not because Marcus chased a finish line, but because when the moment came, he chose to stop. Marcus didn't sleep much that night, not because he was restless, but because everything had finally gone still, the kind of quiet that came after a storm. After Mr. Carlyle and Madison left, after his parents stopped pacing and crying and smiling in disbelief, after Mr. Brooks gave him one last look of pride and said, "You did right, son," Marcus sat alone on the porch, elbows on knees, watching the streetlight flicker near the curb. He didn't feel like a hero. He didn't feel like he'd done anything remarkable, but for the first time he felt seen, not just as a runner, not just as a poor kid from the trailer park, but as someone who made a choice when no one was looking, and it mattered. In the weeks that followed, everything began to change. His parents got steady work with real hours and benefits for the first time in years. His siblings got new backpacks for school, the refrigerator stayed full, and Marcus? He started training at a state-of-the-art facility with coaches, nutritionists, and gear that still felt strange on his back. But he never forgot the shoes. He kept them, the old pair Mr. Brooks had given him, the ones with scuffed soles and faded laces. They stayed in a shoebox under his bed, wrapped in a towel like something sacred, because they were. Those shoes had carried him farther than any metal ever could. Mr. Brooks took the new role offered to him, senior advisor at the track club. It wasn't glamorous, and he didn't want it to be. He just showed up every day, stopwatch in hand, watching from the sidelines as Marcus trained harder, ran smarter, and inspired others without even trying. Their bond didn't change. It deepened. Marcus still listened, still asked for advice, still ended every practice the same way. A nod of respect, one runner to another. Madison recovered quickly. She came to visit one day during practice, standing quietly near the edge of the field. Marcus noticed her but didn't say anything until she stepped forward. "I watched the footage," she said, "from the checkpoint. The medic's body cam picked it up. You could have won." "But you didn't." "I did win," Marcus said, matter of fact. She nodded. "You did." And then, she added, "If it had been me, I'm not sure I would have done the same." "You never know," Marcus replied, "not until you're there." It wasn't a friendship, exactly, but it was a respect, mutual, quiet, and enough. Months passed. Seasons changed. Marcus's name started to appear on entry lists across the region, then the country. His photo popped up in articles about rising stars in track and field. But no matter how far he ran, he never stopped returning. He came back to his old school once a month, volunteering with younger kids in gym class, encouraging them to find something they loved, whether it was running, reading, or painting sneakers with glue and glitter. He said the same thing to every group. You don't have to be the fastest, you just have to keep moving forward. And then one day he saw a boy. Small, maybe 10 or 11, quiet, watching from the edge of the track while the other kids ran laps. Marcus walked over. "You want to run?" The boy shrugged. "I don't have shoes." Marcus smiled and knelt down. He unzipped his bag, pulled out a shoebox, old and soft from being opened too many times, and lifted the lid. Inside were Mr. Brooks's shoes, the same ones he'd worn during the race, the same ones he had carried Madison in. "They're not new," Marcus said, holding them out, "but they'll take you somewhere." The boy's eyes widened. He took the shoes like they were made of gold. Marcus stood back, watched him run across the track, awkward at first, but getting faster with every step. Mr. Brooks, watching from the bench nearby, leaned back and smiled. "Full circle," he murmured. Marcus nodded, Nah, he said softly, eyes never leaving the track. It's just the next lap. And just like that, the shoes kept running. Join us to share meaningful stories by hitting the like and subscribe buttons. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell to start your day with profound lessons and heartfelt empathy.